Welcome, everyone. I hope you had a great day so far in this beautiful space. My name is Nogol Madani. I'm the founder of Glee Factor. I'm a speaker, facilitator, an expert in psychological safety, and I'm also a faculty member at McGill University. So for the next 25 minutes, we're going to talk about soft skills and human skills as our differentiator in the age of AI. But before that, let's just get a pulse of the room. How do you guys feeling? How many of you are feeling sunny right now? Okay, I mean, it is a beautiful space and it is very hot out there. Do we have any foggy people here? Okay, am I the only one? Okay, I'm happy. Okay, because I'm also foggy. Stormy, cloudy. Okay, good. You guys are amazing. Because the majority of time, people are, I would say, mostly cloudy getting into the sun. So, we want to talk about something that I hear a lot these days when I work with teams and when I work with young leaders. And it's really their level of overwhelm around AI. We always say that if social media was all around FOMO and fear of missing out, AI is about FOBO and fear of becoming obsolete. And especially if you guys are working in organizations where you are part of that transformation and AI integration, it's really hard because you're just doing the work that might obsolete you and you have all these questions. And I have to say that you're not the only ones. Like 40% of employees and individual contributors, they think that their jobs, they're going to lose their jobs or they're going to become irrelevant in a few years. And I have to say that it's like so many factors, but it's not true. However, we need some changes, okay? In 2030, there are research from World Economic Forum that I think it's quite interesting that yes, 92 million jobs will be displaced or removed or eliminated, but 170 million jobs will be created. So the net gain is that we're gonna have 78 million jobs, new jobs. And this happened after internet, this happened after any other general technology integration into the business world. So the question is not that you're going to lose your job, but definitely you need upskilling and reskilling. Okay, this is what we're hearing all the time. Another thing that I'm just working a lot, and this is basically the core of my company, is that okay, we're talking here about the technical skills. You need to upskill it, you need to reskill it, you need to actually find new ways of staying relevant. But what is beyond that you can somehow embrace in order to make sure that what you have, it's going to help you out as an individual contributor or as a leader. This is another visual from World Economic Forum. I don't know how many of you have seen this. In 2030, this is where we are. Definitely technical fluency, AI, just knowledge is going to be extremely important. But what's going to be even more important is your critical thinking, digital thinking. They call it kind of a DQ now. So it's your digital judgment. So they say that, we have an IQ and then EQ and we're going to have DQ. This is what I've heard from I have a podcast every week. So this is what I've heard from my guests. It's like, this is, they're talking about DQ. So the more important thing is your curiosity, your ability to learn, your influence, your opportunity of collaboration. And these are all human skills, basically. Okay, so your human skills are going to be your differentiator in the future of work. And I interviewed Joseph Fuller, who's a business professor at Harvard Business School. Last summer, you can watch it if you go on my LinkedIn or my YouTube. And I asked him this question that I'm actually getting asked all the time, that if people what they've qualified for and what they've studied for, it's going to be replaced by machines, then what do people are going to be there in the job market for, except for human capacities and capabilities. But then the question is that how can we develop these skills? Because don't forget that soft skills, that this is like the word that we've been using, are they condescending, using a feminine term for it, like it's not important, it's touchy-feely. Like I'm coming from an engineering background, but it's 10 years that I'm working in the concepts of culture and leadership and development and team development. And I can tell you that still many leaders and many organizations thinks that these are touchy-feely. So this is an extremely important moment that from this extremely unimportant things, these are becoming the core skills that you need to somehow equip yourself in order to stay relevant. So the first important thing is a mindset shift, that you understand that this is going to be your differentiator and that you actually take that agency to make a change. But the most important thing that I'm hearing, because I mostly work with like millennial leaders, it's around moving or evolving from individual contribution to becoming an enabler and facilitator. So many of you, you're amazing high performers. You know, if you're an entrepreneur, if you're working in organizations, and a majority of time, you're not by the system given the chance to connect with people, bringing people together, tap into the collective intelligence, facilitating change. And even you're just acting as an individual contributor. So your biggest role, it's going to be like that mindset shift, enabling yourself to actually facilitate performance and transformation, not just for yourself, but for others. So what are some of the challenges that I'm keep hearing from teams and from leaders? Performing and transforming at the same time. Like this is the challenge that we're hearing all the time, especially considering the fact that these are two different animals. Like performance is all about delivery, it's all about results, it's all about predictability. You know, you reward basically like reliability, whereas transformation and change is about progress. It's about like testing things. Failure is a data point. You're basically rewarding more like people taking courage and taking risks. But do we have that capacity individually in our teams, but also within our organizations? Another thing is leading change. Like there are so many people that they're going through change, but unfortunately they don't have the right tools, they don't have the right mindset. I'm still sitting in meetings and working with leaders that they think they need to sit in meetings and have all the answers. But I promise you, I interviewed the top thinkers on the concept of AI. No one has the answer. So this is just, again, this is the mindset shift that instead of you having all the answers, maybe you have to ask better questions. Maybe you have to actually create that environment for new ideas to emerge. And again, as we said, bringing people together and tapping into the collective intelligence. So this is the framework that we've developed at Glee Factor. And it's not like when we say Glee Factor facilitative leadership, it doesn't mean that you have to have a leadership role. It's really that mindset that when you are doing interactions, am I creating an environment where others can contribute, can collaborate, can take risks so that we can take the next step, especially if we're talking about change and transformation. So at the core of this work is psychological safety, the foundation of facilitative leadership that really allows you to enable other people, bring them together, and facilitating both performance and transformation. And really, I would say, just unload yourself. Like I work with so many young leaders that they are constantly overwhelmed and stressed because they have to do everything themselves. This is not going to work out. Okay. So yeah, I remember, I don't know, some of you are like younger. So back in 2010s, it was all about coaching. Okay. That you have to be like a person or a leader that is able to coach other people. That's extremely still important because you want to unlock individual potentials. However, facilitation is the skill set of our time because this is the one that you want for a collective and for everyone. Different rooms that you're staying in, like it could be within your own team dynamic, it could be with different stakeholders, cross-functional collaborations. So, but let's look at the job of a facilitator. What do? They have, like, I mean, obviously, again, whenever I talk about this, some people say, oh my goodness, because I know so many of you are attached to your technical expertise, and you have to be, and you have to be extremely proud of it. This is not taking away that from you. This is just adding a capacity that, beside having technical, expertise, can I hold a space? Can I allow, an opportunity for reflection? Can I actually allow ideas to emerge? And one of the things that we hear a lot about the future of leadership is those who can connect the dots and it can make sense. Like sense making and connecting the dots in uncertain times, which we will be for the next years and decades, that would be your differentiator. And this is exactly the mindset of a facilitator. So let's talk about psychological safety as the infrastructure. When we say psychological safety, so many people think comfortable environment, safe space, even sometimes, and we can use them, alternatively. However, psychological safety, by the definition that it's been given by Amy Edmondson, a professor at Harvard back in 1999, it's the shared belief by each team member that the team is safe for interpersonal risk-taking. So we're going to actually talk about what is interpersonal risk-taking. But the idea was that she was doing research back in the 90s and on learning, like the relationship between learning and mistakes. Within medical teams, basically, mistakes could be quite costly. After a few months, and her idea was that if teams are good at learning, they're going to make less mistakes. And after a few months, she basically encountered a team that they were amazing at learning, but they were making more mistakes. So, okay, wait a second. This is challenging my, thoughts. And then she realized that they were not making more mistakes. They were just sharing it. And this is how she realized that, okay, what is this phenomenon that allowed these people to share mistakes while others didn't do? Especially, we're talking about mistakes that it's extremely important to be shared and there's learning around it so that we can just lose less people, basically. So what is psychological safety and what is not psychological safety? Psychological safety, again, is not a touchy-feely concept. It's not about pampering. It's not about a comfortable environment. You can use psychological safety to create a safe space if you have a new team member, if you're going through a hard time, a crisis. But at its core, psychological safety is a climate that it's characterized by candor, meaning that it's an environment where you can disagree. You can have a conflict, you can bring hard conversations, but always in a space that there is no judgment, no fear of failure or shame. Again, many people, unfortunately, the minute we say candor or the minute we say that psychological safety is not about niceness, they think that you can be either too direct or too harmful. That's not the case. The respect is at the core of psychological safety. However, I work with many amazing cultures that they don't have psychological safety because people are too comfortable, too friendly with each other, that they don't want to disagree. They don't want to challenge each other. And this means that you're missing on performance, on learning, on innovation. And at the same time, if you don't have it, we're going to talk about it, the cost is really high. So another misconception around psychological safety is that, as I mentioned, it's comfort zone. But that only happens if you have a low performance standard, okay? If you have a low performance standard and high psych safety, you have, comfort zone. And if you don't have actually your apathy zone, this is basically the worst place. You don't want to be there. But I would say that the majority of teams and leaders that we work with, they're on this side. And unfortunately, the majority of them are here. If they're founders, if they're startup people, we ask a lot and we expect a lot without creating a climate and opportunity where that performance can happen. Okay, we're telling everyone, oh, we have to innovate, but then you cannot make mistakes. But how can you innovate if you cannot make mistakes? No? So the ideal where you want to be is learning zone, high psychological safety, and high performance standards. So as I mentioned, the research of Amy Edmondson has been published back in 1999, but it's only around 10 years that we hear the word psychological safety in the business world. And the reason is the research that Google did around 10 years ago, 12 years ago. They wanted to understand why some teams are performing better than the other. They thought, okay, maybe it's the projects that is it's more exciting or it's more meaningful. Maybe it's a relationship between team members. Maybe it's the leadership. And after 2 years and $80 million, this project is called Aristotle. It's a very famous, project that you can go and look up, look for it. They saw that, okay, there are 5 metrics and some of them are important, but the first one is psychological safety. When team members feel comfortable to be vulnerable in front of each other, this is the moment that they would perform their best regardless of the configuration of the teams. And then there was an article written about this in New York Times in 2016, and that's basically how the concept of psychological safety found its way after all this time in the academic world into the business world. But why psychological safety matters? It's because of those interpersonal risks. We're a social species. We don't want to look bad. We want to look competent. We don't want to have conflict. We want to be liked. So we don't take certain risks. So many of us, we don't ask for help because that means that we don't know. So many of us, we don't seek information because it means that we're incompetent. We don't share mistakes, sharing half-baked ideas. We don't discuss challenges. Especially, I hear that all the time during change and transformation. We don't disagree. We don't give feedback. And we simply don't say, I don't know. And the cost of all of this are people who die in hospitals because there was a nurse or a resident who didn't feel safe enough to challenge a physician. It's those Boeing airplanes that crashed because there was an engineer somewhere that knew about what was not working, but they thought that their life or it's going to be consequences for them to share the bad news. So, and on a regular basis, like these are extreme cases, and on a regular basis, it's basically the innovation and the learning and the performance that you're missing on a daily, on a just regular basis. So we know that psychological safety is extremely important. There's tons of research. And now with AI, you can just check ChatGPT or Claude and just say, what is the impact of psychological safety? And you're going to get at least 50, 60 statistics. However, today still only 45% of leaders know what it is and why it matters. And only 26% of them actively take action to foster it. And I would say that this is extremely, again, challenging in this transformation time and in just uncertain times, and also in the future of work, because psychological safety is at the basis of collaboration, is at the basis of communication. And if we cannot do it amongst human beings and people, then it's going to be extremely complicated, I'll promise you, with AI agents and people. So that's why this is an extremely critical moment in our history, and I think a great opportunity for every single one of us to embrace these concepts, somehow, learn them and equip ourselves so that we can slowly change systems that we are working with. So yes, when we talk about safety, we always, we're just so open about it. We say, yeah, it is more of a top-down approach. You will never take more risk than the leaders sitting in a meeting. You're probably not going to be more vulnerable than, someone in a hierarchy. However, you do have that agency because you guys create so many different interactions, one-on-ones, within teams, internally, externally, cross-functionally. And this knowledge and this awareness can help you for yourself to create that identity shift, to be the technical expert, but also to be that enabler and facilitator, regardless of your role. What are some of the things that we work with? So exactly, this is how you show up in every interaction. So there are 3 steps to foster psychological safety. How do you set the stage? How do you set the tone? There's so many leaders come to me and say, oh, you know what? Our people don't share mistakes. They don't, disagree with me. They don't ask for help. And my first question is always, do you do that? because if you don't, no one's going to do it. So setting a stage is understanding that what is our objective here? Bring clarity, especially in the middle of uncertainty. Really try to be as clear as possible. Be honest about what's working and what's not. I'm interviewing different leaders every week, and every single one of them said, we can't fake certainty now. It's past. But can we actually bring like a bit of direction to our teams? Can we just, be honest about what's working and what's not? This is the setting of the, setting the stage and setting the tone. What is expected here? What is allowed here? What is permitted here? Can we take risks? If we're talking about innovation and change, like what is possible? Another one is inviting participation that I'm going to just give you like a few tips before we finish. Again, this is exactly that idea of facilitator mindset, that you don't need to have all the answers. And I have to tell you guys, like, we actually have like a monthly programs, like it's a 4-week program for like leaders and like emerging leaders. And one of their aha moments is when we say that you can actually be silent in meetings and you don't need to fill it up. Because there is this extreme pressure that the minute that there is this awkward silence, I'm the one that I have to fill it up. Whereas when you don't and you sit back, actually you're going to hear different people contributing and participating because you're not dominating the conversation. And finally, we talk a lot about speaking up and taking the risk to share your ideas, but it all depends on how you respond. Like if someone for giving a bad news is being punished or is being like, I don't know, like judged, obviously the next person will not do that. So basically how also we respond is extremely important. So these are a few tips that we always give to our community around inviting participation. Connection before content. One of the things that I'm hearing over and over again from more senior leaders and VPs that I interview or from younger leaders is that, I will tell you what I hear from the older ones. The older ones say that human connection is extremely important and building trust during this time is extremely important and that we need to, prioritize that. Then the younger people constantly say, but I don't have time. I'm expected to perform and I don't have that time. But I will tell you, like sometimes it's only 5 minutes. It's only 3 minutes. I can't tell you how many people I've talked to during pandemic that they say that we're going through a very rough time and then we get on our Zooms and no one asks me how I do and how I feel. And we just get into this agenda, work agenda. And that connection before content is not just for the fun or, for you to be a more good human being. It's amazing if you do it, but it's really for you to create that psychological safety so that people can actually contribute and perform. Because the research shows that, we always ask like a funny questions at the beginning, like, you saw like the weather one, we have something else, and we always say, okay, like you answered, and everyone said, oh, this is so funny. But the research shows that when people talk for less than a minute, even at the beginning of a meeting, there's a higher chance that they're going to take risks and share their ideas later. So you are, by connecting before content and intentionally being mindful of that, you are creating an environment where more people are going to contribute and are going to share. Equitable sharing. Again, lots of people dominate conversations. I'm sure you all have been to meetings that there are 3 people talking. I mean, yeah, okay, I can hear the recognition smiles. Like, okay. We're either, it's us that we're talking, I'm guilty of that, or it's other people, but it happens. We always say that change the dynamics. We use something called step up and step back. Said that, you know what? If you're the one talking all the time, maybe you're going to go last. And if you're someone who doesn't share as much, maybe you're going to step up. We really invite leaders and people that are more experienced to be okay with silence, and they share, as I mentioned, like revolutionary changes. That, oh my goodness, I just didn't feel up that silence, and now more people are talking. The other thing that we say is that create small conversations. Our work, like, we work on experiential learning models. So we always have breakout rooms if it's online, if it's in person. And it's interesting. When people are 3 people talking, it's going to take them, we just say you have 10 minutes, and they say, no, I need 15 minutes. But then when they're finished and they're like in a group of like 20, and I say, okay, you guys talked a lot. What do you want to say? No one dares to share. So I said, okay, what happened? Like, you guys were just having like the best time of your life, because it's safer to talk in a smaller setup. So if you're not getting that, create that. It could be online, it could be offline. And then questions rooted in curiosity. Again, so many leaders come to us and say that, unfortunately, we're just, people don't talk about mistakes or the problems, and then we just hear it as a gossip after the meeting. I say, yeah, because you don't ask the right questions, maybe. People don't dare doing that. And like, for example, they say, we want to hear diverse ideas. I said, okay, what's the question you're asking? I said, does anyone have any different ideas? I said, just think about it. Will you answer that question? I would just run. Like, do you have any different ideas? Like, we're different. It's the most like scariest thing ever. But you can simply change the language and say that, is there any perspective that we might be missing? Is there any different perspective? So you see, it's a change of language and how you deliver the same question that really helps you just show that curiosity and inviting participation. And the last one is landing the learning. Another extremely important, facilitation skill. How many of you have left meetings without knowing why you were there, what was it for, and what's your next step? Like, land a learning is a checkout, is a simple checkout. Is a simple, like, how do you even feel after this meeting? In 1 word or 2 words. What is your action? What is your takeaway? And it's extremely necessary. And, again, I know that no one has time, but this will help you clarify things. And clarity is really one of the most important things, especially during the time that we are, like, in this middle of this uncertainty. So with that, I'm going to just leave you. I know that it's extremely scary out there. AI is going to take all of our lives and everything. But I see this after 10 years working in this field, that it's the most exciting times if we use it properly, and especially for female professionals in the STEM world. So many of you guys, you're not afraid of technology. You already have those technical skills. And obviously, like, intrinsically, you might be more attuned with human skills. So if you combine that, I really believe that female professionals can lead the change for the years to come. So with that, this is a picture of my son, that he's a bit bigger. But, for me, the work that we do around leadership development is a necessity that I think every single one of us is responsible to change the leadership, change the workplaces, and change the cultures, because this is the opportunity for us and we cannot miss it. So thank you so much, everyone, for listening. Thank you.